You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with columnist Carole Malone and the editor of the Courier, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. April Cruel Day, that's the headline in the Mirror, as consumers are hit with a range of price and tax hikes that amount to what the paper calls the worst attack on living standards. The Metro leads with news of energy company websites crashing as customers try to get their meter readings in before they're hit by the big price rises. That's also the angle taken by The Guardian on its front page. The Sun sums it up simply with these words: pain in the gas. The Eye says senior Conservative MPs are accusing the Chancellor of being politically naive as national insurance increases. The Times reports that Britain is worried that America, France and Germany will pressure Ukraine into a peace deal with Russia that will make too many concessions to Moscow. The Financial Times report that the US is dipping into its oil reserves to try to quell the rise in fuel prices sparked by the war in Ukraine. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And tonight we're joined by columnist Carole Malone and the editor of the Courier, David Clegg. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Mirror front page and their headline, April Cruel Day, as all the rises come into force tomorrow. People are going to be hit with, well, they're going to be hit in their pocket big time. David.
Yes, I think it's a really concerning time for a lot of people across the UK at the minute. This is something which has been building slowly. We've had people at my newspaper getting in touch with us quite regularly over the last couple of months, really concerned about this cost of living crisis and the impact it's going to have. And I think especially tomorrow, when it just seems like a few of these things are coming together and causing real problems, not least the energy price cap changing and seeing bills going up by really eye-watering amounts. There's a chap that we covered in our paper, and his monthly bills going up from £106 to £400. It's like taking on an extra mortgage. So I think there's real concern about that. And the political impact of it all is that after the Chancellor's recent statement, it feels like the UK government have not taken this seriously, that there's still a lack of recognition of how this is going to feel at the real brunt, and that people who are already struggling financially are going to be struggling even worse. And it feels to me like the government does need to be doing more about this quite quickly. And we're not really seeing much evidence of that. I know there's some reports in some of the papers tomorrow morning that Tory backbenchers are worried about this, even one minister being quoted anonymously in one of the papers saying that Rishi Sunak should be doing more. So I think this is a real problem. It's going to have real world impact. It plays into the other issue we're going to be discussing tonight about the situation in Ukraine and how that affects energy and gas security. And it just feels that we're in a really turbulent time and that perhaps the government's response to that's not been serious enough as yet.
Yes, and Carole, the Mirror follows on from that unquoted Conservative minister saying, act now, Mr Sunak, to do something to prevent the energy bills going up or to counter that, the council tax, national insurance, water bills, broadband charges. I mean, it's a hell of a lot, isn't it?
I mean, that Mirror front page sums it all up, really. It just lists everything that's going up for people, as you just said there. The council tax, national insurance, water bills, broadband, everything is going up tomorrow. And it feels like we've been carrying the burden for a long time, as David said. We've been talking about this. But the truth of it is, it hasn't started to hit people yet. It is now going to do that as of tomorrow. And, you know, Sunak has said today, he said in all the papers today, that he couldn't do anything more to relieve people's pain. He said he knew this would be unpopular, but he had to be honest with people. Well, being honest is all very well. And he was talking about the COVID debt, saying it was 2.3 trillion. It's all very well being honest, but that doesn't help people, who are literally going to have to make choices about food and about whether they have the lights on and whether they have the heating on. I mean, thank God the summer is coming, and it might not be as bad as it would have been in the winter. But we know that even though energy bills are going to go up by 54% now. That is going to be increased again. The cap is going to be increasing by 700 tomorrow to about 1,900 and something. And then they're saying it could be 3,000 by October, which is huge. I just don't know how people are going to find this extra money. And for Sunak to sit there and say there's nothing he can do, it would be crazy to say he could, stave off the pain for everyone. He can't. But it just doesn't seem to me like he's done enough at the moment. No one in living memory, I can't remember ever a time like this where the bills went up to such an extent and by such massive percentages. This is the worst energy shock in living memory. So, and it's interesting. You were talking about what they were saying about Sunak today. There was one MP said his chances of being leader are gone now. He's like the golden boy has gone to nobody's boy now. No one is interested in Sunak, and they're very angry with him, especially a lot of senior Tories.
David, would you agree with that? Because the rate of inflation is expected to reach a 40-year high of at least 8.7%. Do you agree that Rishi Sunak's hopes of perhaps one day being Prime Minister have evaporated?
I'm not sure I'd go that far, because we said that many times about Boris Johnson and it didn't turn out that way. But I think there's certainly a sense that his stock has fallen dramatically. If you remember at the height of the pandemic, when he was being lauded for the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, it feels like there's been a definitive shift since then. And I do think if the front story on the Metro tomorrow, which is talking about just the absolute panic that we're seeing from people that are at the sharp end of this, trying to go online onto their energy provider and put in their most up-to-date meter reading so that they don't get charged more for gas that they've used before the price changed. The energy companies seem to have had a catastrophic failure in allowing the technology to work on that. But I think what really brought that home to me today was I was picking my kids up from school earlier, and it was the talk of the playground that you need to do this, get your energy reading across by the end of the day. This had really cut through to everyone because there is such concern about the cost and how this is going to affect everyone's bills. So I think the fact that we're seeing that type of situation where people are so concerned about their energy bills, they're crashing websites, that suggests that the current UK government, in particular the Chancellor, their response has not been adequate. It has not been up to the sense of gravity and seriousness which the public certainly feel about it. So I would agree absolutely with Carole that is bound to have a longer term political implication, especially when there's been the other issue.
It's interesting, David, that today all the big energy companies were trying to blame money expert Martin Lewis.
Yeah, I saw that.
They had to file their meter readings today so that the energy companies wouldn't charge them the new prices for energies they're already used. The idea that they're blaming Martin Lewis, it's farcical. These companies knew today was coming 4 months. They have known. They should have got their houses in order to prepare. They should have known that customers were going to be wanting their attention today. And they're just not ready. These companies are really keen to take our money, but they're not keen to help us. And I completely agree with you. This rush today shows the terror that people are feeling about what's to come. I mean, it is terrifying. You mentioned a bill of one of your readers before. One of our bills has gone from 190 a month to 500 and something a month. That's a huge rise for anyone.
And the other thing about the energy companies is since their systems went into meltdown, they've been very quick this evening or earlier this afternoon to say there will be more time. Don't worry about it. It doesn't have to happen tonight. So they're going to have to be very careful that they get their systems in check now so that people don't lose out further because of their technological meltdown.
Yeah, it is very true, though, that people are absolutely terrified because they have known for some time in lots of WhatsApp groups and emails have been going around saying, do your meter reading, do your meter reading. But they've left it to the last possible day because I think that the reality has dawned on them that this is happening and what's 22 million customers will see an increase. The majority will see their bills rise to just under £2,000 a year. Overnight, people are thrown into debt.
I think a lot of people didn't realise that they didn't think about the meter. Martin Lewis told them to do it. Now, he's the guy who's on the side of the consumer, and he's the one who said, do it, do it before midnight tonight. I think people thought they didn't have to do that, but when you think about it, it's better they do, because the energy companies, the idea that they're going to be able to do it all right if people don't get their meter readings in time, well, we can't trust them to get it right. So I hope lots of people have today. The one I'm with is Octopus, and they've said you've got a few days grace before they will start charging you.
Just on the politics.
Sorry, go ahead, David.
About that. Well, I'd only seen the Sun front page there as you flashed it up on screen, because it was just coming in as we're on air. But I suspect it will strike terror into the heart of the UK government, and particularly Rishi Sunak, that not only is the Mirror, a traditional Labour supporting paper, going so heavy on this with such a powerful front page, but the Sun is saying exactly the same thing. Both the mass market newspapers in the country realise that their readers are going to be most concerned about this, and I would be pretty concerned about that if I was the UK government.
Yes, the Sun, they're paying in the gas, their headline on screen for you. But the Eye also concentrating on the anger that's being levelled towards Rishi Sunak, because this living crisis really has actually, as the headline says, hit home today. Carole.
I mean, in some sense, yes, I think he has to help, people on lower incomes. And it isn't just going to be, it's not just, there was talk the other day that benefits should be increased. It's not just the people on benefits who are going to be suffering here. The working poor are going to be suffering. Middle classes are going to be suffering. Only the very rich will not suffer in this crisis. Sunak's argument is he's got a 2.3 trillion debt to sort out. And he's saying, that there will be perhaps more help come October. But, a lot of people might not make it till October. I think that one of the things I saw is that people are going to be in fuel poverty, something like 2.5 million people in fuel poverty, every kind of energy poverty. And by October, another 2.5 million. So that's 5 million people who are not going to be able to make ends meet with the money that the money that they're earning and the bills that they're getting. There's been nothing like this since the 50s. Nothing as big and as severe as this since the 50s, and it's striking terror into the hearts of everyone. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. But the Chancellor saying that he can't help more people at the moment, at least. Thank you both. We're going to take a break. Coming up, the front page of the Financial Times. We're going to be diving into that. Biden orders record oil stockpile release in effort to quell fuel costs. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, Carole Malone and David Clegg. Welcome back to both of you. Let's have a look at the FT front page. Biden orders record oil stockpile release in effort to quell fuel costs. And this is the new release of 1 million barrels a day, by far the biggest announced so far to combat the lack of stocks. Carole, take us into this one. Well, yes, we know what's happening. Putin today has said that he will block our gas supplies if we don't start paying him in rubles. He wants to shore up the ruble. It's collapsing, ergo his economy is collapsing. And he's telling what he calls unfriendly states that they're going to have to open bank accounts and pay him in rubles. Biden is trying to stop that. It's very, a lot of Western countries have said they're not going to do that, but it's dangerous because a lot of commodities are bought in dollars and in euros, and because Putin's dollars have been frozen, he can't use them. But this is damaging This is damaging to the dollar because it's endangering the dominance of the dollar in the markets. And so it's quite a big thing to do. It's quite a terrifying thing to do. Boris is already warning lots of countries, Europe, not to cave in with these sanctions because there are parts of Europe that are very, very reliant on Russian gas. Germany being the biggest. I think it was in 2020. Germany got 60% of its gas imports from Russia. Last year, it was 55% from Russia. And Europe as a whole it's the largest importer of natural gas in the world, and the largest share of that comes from Russia. So, Russia really has us over a barrel, literally a barrel, which is terrifying. We only get 5%. The UK only gets 5% of its gas from Russia. So we won't have a problem with supply, but we will have a problem with prices as the global demand for it gets bigger. So it will affect us. Germany is panicking now. Italy is panicking now. They get half of their gas supplies from Russia. It's terrifying for the world. It makes you think what's going to happen. Germany have said, their economy minister today, a guy called Robert Habeck, he said that Germany wouldn't be independent of Russia until 2024. So what are they going to do in the meantime? They're rationing their people now. But how long are the supplies they've got going to last if Putin turns the tap off?
Yes, and it's. I know you say 5%. The UK, we're not as reliant as Germany say, but overall, it is going to affect globally. Yeah. And with America dipping into their reserves, it's the drawdown that would take the reserve to its lowest level since 1984. So this is quite a gamble for Biden, who already is quite unpopular because of the rise in fuel costs. David?
Yes, I think this is a major challenge for politicians across the globe because energy security is now so important. It ties into the other big political issue of climate change and the reliance on oil and gas. That obviously has a domestic dimension in the UK and indeed in Scotland about North Sea oil and how we exploit that in future. I think actually, though, the Vladimir Putin's move here is in some ways being exposed as a little bit of a bluff. I think there's already some sign that he's backtracking today, that there will be some workaround, that this may be more about being able to talk tough domestically. He is extremely reliant on that money. It is a symbiotic relationship that we have with Russia in regards to oil and gas, which is really quite dangerous, and from the West perspective, being able to wean ourselves off that would be the wisest and safest course of action. But it feels like there will be a workaround, especially because if we think back, the oil continued to flow even in the darkest days of the Cold War in the last century. So it feels like some of the signals we're seeing this evening are perhaps that Putin is backing away from that. But I think the political implications for national leaders across Europe and indeed the West is that there's a very dangerous and unstable character with a large share of the globe's oil supply and gas supply, and that is a major concern. So it brings us on, I think, a little bit to some of the other stories we're seeing today about whether Ukraine will come under international pressure to go into a peace deal too early. Because if you're, as Carole has just outlined there, if you're Germany or indeed most of the European Union who are very dependent on oil, you're concerned by this. My suspicion is it's a toothless threat, but it's still a threat that's going to cause a lot of worry in the corridors of power in Europe.
Just change the subject. Go ahead, Carole.
I was just going to say there's talk now because in places like Germany and Italy where, the gas is going to be shut, there's talk of going back to coal power and nuclear power. And, Germany is really opposed to nuclear power, has been since the 70s. But, if there's, and I can see lots of other countries going back to coal power.
We have run out of time, but you'll be able to extemporise at the 11 o'clock hour. See you in a moment. Thank you both.